All right. I think we got this rolling. All right, all right. Let's wait for everybody to come on in. Welcome to the Nomi Key Show's live coverage of the last presidential debate, the second presidential debate real debate at least, between former Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. We are 12 days, away from Election Day, and this is a debate that is operating a little bit differently than previous debates, in that based on the last debate and how Donald Trump was talking over everybody, literally like dominated every moment that was available, all the air. There's now a mute button. And so we are gearing up for what is likely to be an unprecedented debate. I'm going to air it here. And then afterwards, we're joined. I'm so grateful that our friend, our comrade, Michael Figuerdo from the Humanist Report, which I'm sure you watch, is going to be joining us afterwards. So we're super excited about that. So you definitely want to stick around afterwards to watch the analysis that we have. But just a couple things to keep in mind as we go in. I mean, there is still a looming decision. There's still Democrats are now starting to protest because they realize this could actually happen. I don't know. They realize the implications are. They're worried about being primaried. I'm not sure what's going on with maybe Dianne Feinstein took it too far, but we are still on the verge of having Amy Coney Barrett confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. She's a judge right now. Conservative judge. That would make 6 conservative judges. So, that's likely to be a major topic of conversation. I'm just going to go through a couple things to keep in mind during this final presidential debate. Excuse me for a second. I am producing this thing on my own. What are you guys drinking tonight? I'm drinking a little mezcal and kombucha, and I made like this little, this stuff at the top, which is a little bit of sugar, cane sugar, some smoked paprika, a little ginger, and a little turmeric, and some pink sea salt. And then I have ginger kombucha and like a little bit of mezcal. I don't like a lot, just a touch, because I'll probably have a few of these and it'll equal like one drink. So some things to keep in mind. Will Donald Trump change his tactics tonight? I think that's the big question here. I mean, he will be muted, so does that mean he's going to be better behaved? And with that, if there's more space for Biden to talk, will Biden flub? I mean, he's known for that. He didn't, and he really, especially in the last debates, I think he really rose to the occasion. People worried about his mental agility. So that's something to watch too. Now that Trump is not cutting him off every 5 seconds, he might have the ability to make a mistake. Another thing to keep in mind, how will Donald Trump handle the moderator? She is an African-American woman who is a feature in the White House press room. So that's a place that can get very antagonistic. Most of the press in that setting for these daily White House briefings have really grown frustrated with the president and the multiple press secretaries that they've had, from Sean Spicer to Kayleigh McEnany, to what's her name? Oh my God, I forgot her name already. But you know what I'm talking about. See, I'm trying to manage multiple things at once. And the big question, there are these attacks through the New York Post that have been pushed out, unverified, by the way. So I just want to make that very clear. This wasn't verified. And I think if we start to get fast and loose with our facts against our opponents, it could be used against us, which of course it is. So the New York Post published these unverified emails mixed in with stuff that was clearly true. So, you have to be able to isolate what's true versus what's there to compound the story and make it look bigger. I'm not saying it's not true. I don't even know if it's consequential, to be honest. And frankly, more than anything, we have a sitting president who's doing the same exact things while in office with his own family. Even if the story about Hunter Biden is true, and much of it is, the fact that he went and he worked for Burisma, all that stuff, even if that's true, Joe Biden was not the sitting vice president. And so that's the line of the law that gets a little murky. It doesn't mean that he shouldn't have done it, that it smelled fishy, nobody should do it. It's, did you do it while you were in office? And Donald Trump is doing it while we speak across the world, setting his family up, protecting his assets, protecting his debts, meaning to pay off his debts. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out. I guess the big question other than that is, will either candidate get cut off? So let's go live to the debate right now. I'm going to share the screen. And here we go. Let's do this. I wonder what we're waiting for. No plexiglass in this debate. I mean, it's also ridiculous that we have 3 minutes until they come out, I guess, but commercial break. It's also ridiculous that the news is moving so quickly that last week Donald Trump declared he was over COVID, which he had at the last debate, and this is not a topic of conversation in this debate. What they're talking about is, will the mics be shut off? Rather than, will Donald Trump will he show up in a mask? We know that the audience now, they're being much more harsh on the audience. People have to get tested. They have to wear masks inside. There seems like there's enough of a distance from the moderator, but still, I mean, I don't know if he's completely over COVID. In many cases, it's coming back for a lot of folks. So I hope that Biden, I think that's something we should watch, that Biden emphasizes how this crisis, this COVID crisis that Donald Trump thought would never hit him, does not discriminate by class, by sex, by your affiliation, and of course by race. And Donald Trump now understands personally what it's like to suffer with COVID, and so do many members of his office, the White House, and his allies. So I hope that Biden brings it up more. I mean, I think the things to look out for is Biden going to hammer home on the economy? Is Biden going to hammer home on COVID? Is Biden going to talk about how COVID was exacerbated and really turned into a pandemic in this country and globally as a result because of Donald Trump's complete ignorance when it comes to pandemics and wanting to gut all of our government, including the CDC? Is Biden going to talk about education? Is Biden going to talk about working people and their ability to organize? If Biden is really making a play to working people right now, is he going to bring in the conversation of unionizing back? Because I think these are issues that are going to touch the key voters that he needs to bring back. That's the whole strategy with Biden. Will Biden talk about, if Trump does bring up Hunter Biden, will Biden snap back, clap back, and say, Mr. President, let's go through the multiple areas where you are using your current office, the U.S. government, to make money while in office and afterwards for your family and for your own interests? Will he talk about his commingling of projects with his family in China? Mr. China. Well, let's talk about China, Mr. President. Let's talk about your businesses and your dealings with Chinese oligarchs. You seem to talk a lot about China all day long, but let's how many people on the stage have actually made money with Chinese oligarchs while they're in office? Well, I think it's just Donald Trump. These are the debate tactics. So when Donald Trump throws a firebomb, and now that there's a space to respond, Biden needs to be sharp and on his feet and clap back. How dare you go after me for XYZ thing because you have done the same exact much, much worse. Or, Donald Trump likes to invent things, so he could clap back with quite a few real facts. I think we're getting started right now. Here we go. Guys, I apologize. I realized I wasn't putting it on with a sound. My apologies.
And I do want to say a very good evening to both of you. This debate will cover 6 major topics. At the beginning of each section, each candidate will have 2 minutes uninterrupted to answer my first question. The debate commission will then turn on their microphone only when it is their turn to answer, and the commission will turn it off exactly when the 2 minutes have expired. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it. And I got better, and I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators, we're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. You hear nothing else I say tonight. Hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where The New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well, and we have numerous others. Then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you, and because this is new information, you have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular that's the head of logistics, and this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine, and we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter, and he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no plan.
I don't think we're going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, but China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me.
He's not the
months
president.
behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal.
Clearly no.
But it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of numbers, 700,000 people would be dead right now. But it was a far less lethal disease. Look, his own person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic, it was horrible, we didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us how to do this. Also, everything that he said about the way, every single move that he said we should make, that's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was way behind us.
Vice President Biden, your response.
My response is he is xenophobic, but not because he shut down access from China. And he did it late after 40 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we go out and get whatever is needed out there to protect people. And again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about, don't worry, it's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your reaction?
I say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace.
What does that
but
even
he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families. Every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, you know, this is dangerous. And you catch it. And, you know, I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though.
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then I have a
seconds.
question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he has never said, you said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that it came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that it came here either. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry. The warm weather. Don't worry. Maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco.
What?
But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing, you're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even, and because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You certainly did. You certainly did.
Don't get baited.
I talked about xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't
baited.
about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies to handling
He thought
this.
I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well,
That's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the nation, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools. Schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more pods. And he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Let's talk about schools. President Trump,
I think we have to respond, if I might.
Please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight and they're dying. They're dying.
Oh my God.
And he supports all these people. All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive
It's not closed.
country with a massive economy.
Massively open
People are
right now.
losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level
Medicare
that
for
nobody's ever
all.
seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our
Abuse of
country.
what?
You know, I've said it often. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself.
Vice
And that's
President.
what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close
Except
down the country.
it's not.
If
Death
one
is the
person
problem.
in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, your
Simply
response.
not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open, but would they need resources to open? You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that what we're going to make sure that we open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. So don't worry about it. Come on.
President Trump, let me follow up with you quickly.
By the way, I
on-
will say this. If you go and look at what's happened to New York, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. And when you talk about plexiglass, these are restaurants that are dying. These are businesses with no money.
Because you
Putting
did
up
not
plexiglass is
contain
unbelievable expensive.
pandemic.
And it's not the answer. I mean, you're going to
They
sit
don't
there
wanna-
in a cubicle wrapped
they don't
around
wanna go
with
inside.
plastic.
I'm a New Yorker.
These are businesses that are
Astoria.
dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. You
But you
just
can-
can't. Take a look at New York and what's happened to my wonderful city for so many years. I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
because they don't
Take
want
a
to
look at what
die.
New York has done in terms of turning the curve down in terms of the number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states
Be
in the
careful
upper
what you say
Midwest.
there.
That's where the spike
Starting
is
to spike in
occurring
New York, yeah.
significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
when you
about-
say spike,
That's a Cuomo
take
hit,
a
by
look
the way,
at what's
guys.
happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do
Pennsylvania's a
anything. It's been
Republican
like a
state.
prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed, and they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems. And we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up
It's a
with you
joke.
before we move on to our next section. President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony. But he did say, don't wear masks. He did say,
What?
as you know, this is not going to be a problem.
What?
I think he's a Democrat, but that's okay.
What are you
He said this
talking
is not
about?
going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
My response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American
Bingo.
people. He was told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us, Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we find out in the New York Times the other day that, in fact, his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing. And a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous problem.
Well, this is
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we're going to move on.
The Wall Street one, I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it. You have raised a lot of money.
You both
Tremendous
do.
amounts of money. And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money. As president and as somebody that knows most of those people, I could call the heads of Wall Street, the heads of every company in America. I would blow away every record,
no,
but I
they
don't want to do
wouldn't, 'cause
that
they don't like
because
you
it puts me
anymore.
in a bad position. And then you bring up Wall Street. You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not me. I could blow away your records that, like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact, we beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able to.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Don't tell me about Wall
Average
Street.
contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section, which is national security. And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty.
Dude.
And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything to Putin about it. I don't think he's talking to them a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said, if anything, to the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. But the point is this, folks. We are in a situation where we have foreign countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question, why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, let me respond to the first part as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife. And you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and you know, someday you're going to have to explain why did you get 3.5. I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that. And through John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, DNI, he said the one thing that's common to both of them They both want you to lose, because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond. And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China.
Perfect clapback.
And in fact, is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid, because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell
told
you
you that.
Excuse
them? Me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia.
What are you? Whoa!
You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement.
And you're in office.
That we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions about all of this, but I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you have a deadline for when you're going to release them to the American people?
I get treated worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because I have a lot of people
oh my God, sorry guys.
in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance to talk about this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years you're going to release your taxes. Nobody knows it, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
Come on, man.
President Trump, and then
Just
I want to
say
get
it,
to
please.
two
I need
questions
have
to both of
some-
you.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. 48 million. I guarantee you, if I spent 1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong. Because
All
the
right.
kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken, I mean, your brother made money in Iraq. Millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy
Why are
company
you leading
when
with
you were
that
vice
and
president.
not Trump
In
stuff?
retrospect,
Seriously.
was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of a Burisma, a company,
Stop talking
that
about it.
somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had it. The only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
Never
President
to
Trump,
deal with
let me
China. By the
ask
way,
my question to you.
But
and
could I
then
just,
we'll-
one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that.
Oh my God.
And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. 183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy
I'm going to let the Vice President
That's
respond to that quickly,
100%
and then I need to get to a
dishonest.
question to you. Very
No
quickly,
basis
Vice
for
President.
that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump, this is for you. Since you took office, you've never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your properties abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is, everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's when it was. It was opened it was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was thinking about doing a deal in China like millions of other people. I was thinking about it, and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then, unlike him, where he's vice president and he does business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking up
Okay,
money
President
every
Trump,
place
thank
he
you.
goes.
We do
Not
need to move
true.
on. I do want to ask you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. There have, of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay? And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up we're 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them economically. That's the way I will run it, and that's what we did in upholding steel tariffs and a range of other things when we were president and vice president.
All right, let's talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, no, I have to respond to that.
Okay, very quickly, and then we're going to move on to North Korea.
with $1.5 billion from China to manage after spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two, number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy, though, what
No, but wait a
specifically are
minute.
you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You've said you're going to make them pay.
China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave
New
$28 billion.
New sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers.
Taxpayers' money.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money. Didn't come from
You
China.
know the taxpayer is, it's called China. China paid
true.
$28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid up. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry.
Okay.
And now we have a steel industry.
Okay, Vice President Biden, your response, please.
Our response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making in the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont. They're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want to talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, just
I do
for
want
1
to turn
second,
to
please.
10 seconds, Mr. President.
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about North
I'm not a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I got
President
elected.
Let's
get off the subject of China. Let's talk sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. You've talked about your beautiful letters with him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test. And yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next one.
So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House. Right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war, and he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And you know, about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, you know, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, Millions of people would be dead right now.
President
we
Trump,
don't have
that's
a war,
30
and
seconds.
I have a good
Thank
relationship.
you. Vice President Biden, to you. North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat?
Because I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off. And they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You've said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get the Korean Peninsula should be nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American families.
Kristen, they tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds,
They
President.
tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it. He didn't like Obama. He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay, I
know
got to
for
give him a
fact they
chance to
tried.
respond to that
He
before we
wouldn't
move
do
on.
it.
You
And
know,
that's okay. You know what? North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. You know, people don't understand. Having a good
President
relationship
Trump,
with
we have
leaders
to
of
move
other
on, 'cause
countries
we have
is
a lot
a
of
good thing.
We have a lot of questions to get
Yes,
to.
not
Your
a bad
response.
Saying we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded
Whoa.
Europe, the rest of Europe. Come on. The reason he would not meet with President Obama is because President Obama said, we're going to talk about denuclearization. We're not going to legitimize you, and we're going to continue to put stronger and stronger sanctions on you. That's why he wouldn't meet with us.
All right,
And
let's
it didn't
move
happen.
on. Let's
Excuse
move on
me.
and talk
He
about
left
American
me a
families.
mess, Kristen.
President Trump, okay, we do
They
need to move on.
left me a mess. North Korea was a mess.
We
and
need
in
to
fact,
move
if
on
you
so that
remember
we
the
can get
first
to all
2 or
of our
3
other
months,
questions tonight,
there was a
President
very
Trump.
dangerous period in my first 3 months before we sort of worked things out a little bit.
Okay.
There was a they left us a mess. And Obama would be, I think, the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is health care, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and health care is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision. Run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are down. Everything's down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run it, it's no good. What we'd like to do is terminate it. We have the individual mandate done. I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't win, we will have to run it, and we'll have Obamacare, but it'll be better run. But it no longer is Obamacare, because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions will always stay. What I would like to do is a much better health care, much better, will always protect people with pre-existing. So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful health care. The Democrats will do it because there'll be tremendous pressure on them, and we might even have the House by that time, and I think we're going to win the House, okay? You'll see, but I think we're going to win the House. But come up with a better health care, always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important, we have 180 million people out there that have great private health care. Far more than we're talking about with Obamacare. Joe Biden is going to terminate all of those policies. These are people that love their health care, people that have been successful, middle-income people, been successful. They have 180 million plans, 180 million people, families. under what he wants to do, which will basically be socialized medicine, he won't even have a choice. They want to terminate 180 million
Let's hope he
plans.
doesn't have a choice.
We have done an incredible job on health care, and we're going to do even better.
Okay, Vice President Biden, yes, this is for you. Your health care plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
What I'm going to do is pass Obamacare with a public option, become Biden-care. The public option is an option that says that if you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal to be, if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance, the reason why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why I did not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, we're going to make sure we're in a situation that we actually protect pre-existing. There's no way he can protect pre-existing conditions. None, zero. You can't do it in the ether. He's been talking about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact, I still have a few more minutes. I know you're getting anxious. The fact is that he's already cost the American people, because of his terrible handling of the COVID virus and the economic spillover, 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare, and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions. And all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said. He's accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a health care system run entirely by the government? What's your response to them?
It's ridiculous. It's like saying that, the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think health care is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable health care. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions, as well as a whole range of other people who in fact are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick because you've lost your home insurance, your health insurance your company's gone under? We have to provide health insurance for people at an affordable rate, and that's what I do.
Affordable rate?
President Trump,
Excuse me, he was
your
there
response.
for 47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years, and it's not like it was 25 years ago.
almost
It
like
was 3
Republican Party didn't
3/4. It was
exist.
just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have socialized medicine, just like he went with fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania after he gets a nomination, where he got very lucky to get it. And he goes to Pennsylvania and he says, oh, we're going to have fracking. And you never asked that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this, I have to say.
By the way.
But somebody should ask the question.
You can ask
he goes for a year. There will be
We
no
have
fracking.
a number of topics we're
No,
going to
but
get
that's a
to.
big- that's a big question.
We're going to get to. We're going to get to.
It's the same thing with socialized
I have to
medicine.
respond.
Vice President, your response, please.
My response is people deserve to have affordable health care, period.
Affordable.
Period, period, period. And the Biden care proposal will, in fact, provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it.
To whom?
And they're going to have lower
Just say
premiums.
it.
You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on health care. Not a thing.
Kristen, when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening on
public
Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine, and when he and healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally
Wrong.
destroyed, and destroying your Social Security.
opposite, you
and this whole
freaking
country will
idiot.
come down. You know, Bernie Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They wanted to make it work.
Okay,
It
let's hear
was
Vice President
impossible
Biden
to work.
respond.
It doesn't
Vice
work.
President
He's a
Biden
very
responds.
confused guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people
come
because
on.
I disagreed with them. Joe Biden he's running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that they're going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So no, I mean, the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
He tried to get
10
rid of.
seconds,
He
Mr.
tried to hurt
President, and then I
Social
have to go to
Security
another
years
question.
ago. Years ago. Go back and look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All
One
right,
thing,
let's move
but
on.
this
I'm
is
going to
the
move
guy
on.
that
Let
when
me,
they
Mr.
announced
President, I have
last
to move
week,
on to the next question.
They said
or
the
else
stock
we're not
market
going to have
will
time
boom
to talk about it.
if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay,
The
let's
biggest
move on to the
analysts are
next
saying that.
question.
Let me respond.
Very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, the people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more dollars. $700 billion more dollars, because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol
401ks,
Hill. We're going to
Kristen,
move on, gentlemen.
401ks are through the roof.
We're gonna
People's
move on.
stock are through the roof.
All right.
And he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period
We're gonna-
of time before he
okay,
even knew
we're
it.
gonna move on to
and
the
he
next
left.
question.
And the people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next question,
They
gentlemen.
understand.
As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work. And as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty,
look.
and more families are going
57
hungry
minutes
every
in.
day. Those hit hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30
In
seconds.
journalism, they
Because
call this
Nancy Pelosi
burying
doesn't want
the
to
lead.
approve it. I do.
But you're the president.
I do, but I still have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House, because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President,
You
let-
know, the Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
Let me follow up with you, Vice President
we made a
Biden,
deal, the
because
Republicans
let me
will
ask
pass
Vice
it.
President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets, so they didn't have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they could keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter with
The
these
bill that was
guys?
passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high-crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these states. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to do that, I'd love to help them, but what that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right,
By the way,
I want to.
if I get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum wage.
I do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out, too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. Is not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to immigration,
one thing very
but I
quickly,
want
he
to get
said we
your
have
reaction.
to help our small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state option.
You said very
recently. We have
recently.
to help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses. How are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said very recently you would
by the way.
consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Is that still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but
in a
what I
second
really
administration?
like, in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would be
Okay, President
ruinous.
Trump, thank you. Quick response, Vice President Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage, businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through merit.
But how will you reunite these kids with their families,
Let me just tell you,
Mr. President?
they built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this
525
conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to that?
They did it. We changed.
Did not
They built the
separate
cages.
They,
who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
who
we're
built
talking
the cages,
about.
Joe?
Let's talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you
I
about
will say this.
immigration.
They went
10
down.
seconds,
We
and
brought
then I need to ask
reporters,
you a question.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
that
of
have
them
gotten
haven't been
such
reunited
But
with their
just ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because we made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it very clear. Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy, and they want to do that, is they've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River, and it's illegal. And you say, oh no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
President
Kristen,
Trump,
he
your
had
reaction.
8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed.
We did.
Without having a specific, we got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President
Wrong.
Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested, they in fact were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that I seek asylum based on the following premise, why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
So
30
important.
seconds, and then we'll move
It just shows that he has no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in.
Oh my God.
We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe. They never come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay,
But they're
President
very,
Trump, let's
very
give
few.
Vice President Biden a chance
What?
to respond, and then we're going to move on to the
You
next
don't know the
section.
law,
Oh
Joe.
my
Vice
God.
President
Joe's a
Biden, your
lawyer,
response.
you
You know
idiot.
the law, what he's telling you is simply not true.
Oh my God.
Check
Check
it
it
out.
out.
They don't come back.
Check it out.
Oh my God.
All right, let's move on
But we don't have to
the
worry
next
about it because they
section.
terminated it, so we don't have to worry
What
about
did
it.
you
Let's
just
move
say?
on to the next
And you have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
All right, let's talk about our next section, which is race in America. And I want to talk about the way Black and brown Americans experience race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has her graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child, when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street. Making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, yes, yes, sir, no, sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are, in fact, the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is, there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. Well, guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it, but we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators. And they have never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump.
Oh,
and if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform, Obama and Joe didn't do it. I don't even think they tried because they had no chance at doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture, and everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment is being made. Biggest beneficiary, the black and Hispanic communities, and then historically black colleges and universities. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and they said, I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back because President Obama would never give them long-term funding, and I did. 10-year long-term funding, and I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And I said, the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them, and they like me and I like them. But I saved colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice President?
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is the guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you do it? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this. But you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you.
Oh, okay.
I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is, you know his character, you know my character, you know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up.
Excuse me.
Please respond, and then we're going to have follow-up
If this stuff is true
questions.
about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody's
Take a look
President
at the
Trump, I
laptop
want to
from
stay
hell.
on the issue
Excuse
of
me.
race. We're
Take a
talking
look at
about
the
the issue.
laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're
Nobody.
talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
And I
you've
have to
just
respond to that.
Please,
Because look,
very
there
quickly.
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And
You
that's
gotta
exactly
be.
what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This
was
is
told.
where he's going. The
right.
laptop is Russia,
Yeah.
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You
okay?
have to be kidding. Here we
Mr.
go
President,
again with Russia.
We're going to continue on the issue of race. Mr. President,
believe
you've
that one.
described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
But what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know.
and by
I mean, I
the
don't know
videos?
what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark.
Oh my God.
But I don't
What?
care who's in the audience.
What?
I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a
How
follow-up
is she keeping a
question
straight
for you.
face?
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire. Every single one. Started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's going to get rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys, last time we were on stage here, he said, I told them to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy is a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up
No,
question.
he made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said
where
you're
did that-
Abraham
No,
Lincoln.
where did that? No.
You said-
I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm
I
saying-
didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community. Now, you have done nothing other than the crime bill, which put
Oh, God.
tens of thousands of black men, mostly, in jail.
All right, let me-
And you know
let me
what?
a- let me
they
ask
remember
Vice
it because
President
if you
Biden
look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about-
very,
No,
very
you
badly.
mean your voter
Just take a
suppression?
look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change it since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money on. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done, because I think the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drug. But they were not in the crime bill.
But
Okay,
why
so-
didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians.
Thank you.
Why didn't he get it done?
Well, what
That's
do you-
what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president along with Obama as your
Where's your
president,
wall?
your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a
Your
lot of it
response.
done. We released
didn't get
38,000.
anything
We got
done.
38,000 prisoners left from the.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency.
That's true.
In fact, we're the
Different
ones that
prisons.
put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running, to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I
Quick
just
response,
asked,
and then we're
I
gonna
just
move
asked
on
one
to climate
question.
change.
So big.
Why didn't you do it in the 8
He
years,
just
a short
said-
time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens
Because-
of thousands of mostly
Come on.
black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8
You
years
just
with
said he
Obama.
released 38,000
You
prisoners
know why,
and ended
Joe?
private
Because you're all
prisons.
talk and no action.
All right, Vice President
Because
Biden,
we
and
have
then
a
we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress.
Come on, Biden. Come out, just counterattack him.
That's the answer.
That's the moment.
Okay.
That's
You
the
gotta talk
moment.
them into it, Joe.
All
Sometimes
right.
you got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section,
Like I
which
did with
is
criminal
climate
justice
change.
reform. I had
Okay.
to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen,
You did what we
we're running out of
already done.
time, so we got to get on to climate change, please. You both have very different visions on climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years under this administration. We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
And we
Biden.
haven't destroyed our industries.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you, uninterrupted.
Climate change and climate warming, global warming, is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit limit emissions, will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, your
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan, that his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3.
Oh, my God.
They know nothing about the climate.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate. And they're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look, their real plan costs $100 trillion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because they want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing.
What?
This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this wasn't done by smart people. This wasn't done by anybody. Frankly, I don't even know how it can be good politically. Right. They want to spend $100 trillion. That's their real number. He's trying to say it was 6. It's $100 trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows.
What is he saying?
And many other things.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President respond, and we're running out of time, and we have a lot more questions to get to.
Country.
So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more questions.
I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queens.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan was endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor, because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, $45, $50 an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump,
Excuse me.
please
We are
respond, and then I have some
We are
follow-ups.
energy independent for the first time. We
What?
don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive, kills all the birds.
Oh, my
It's
God.
very intermittent. It's got a lot of problems, and they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China. And the fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
no, it's
Find me a
Solar.
scientist said that.
I love solar.
He's
but
countering
solar
natural
doesn't
gas,
quite have it
fracking?
yet. It's not powerful yet to really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So
False.
it's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the
All right.
economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want, and what about fracking?
All right,
Now
let me
ask
let
him
me
about
allow
fracking.
Vice President Biden to
I
respond.
never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is
Show
he's
the list.
flat lying.
Would you
Flat-
rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money and doing it. But it's a transition to that.
I have one more question in this pod, and then
Excuse me,
we have.
he was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I
Good.
am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking
You said
and or
fracking.
oil
You
on
didn't say
federal
fracking.
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the two of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic. We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All right.
And everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice
that.
President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that, in fact, pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turn in the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutions the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would he
question.
close
It
down
falls-
the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close
it
down the
falls-
oil
By the way, I
industry?
would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I will
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop
Why would you do that?
Because we're on
the
fire.
oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal, but
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time, and I'd stop giving to the oil industry. I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas. To solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
That's a good
We
point.
actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania?
Oh, my God.
Oklahoma?
Vice President
You're such
Biden,
an
let me give you
effing
10 seconds to
politician.
respond, and then I
Ohio.
have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he gonna
final
get
question
China
to
to
both
do
of you.
it?
No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final
Good.
question. We
No,
have to
I'm
move on
going
to
to
our final
rejoin Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All right,
That'll
this
cost you
is
$1
about
trillion.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make our country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, etc. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success, but I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country. Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Wow. I would love, actually we should see if are they going to shake each other's hands? Oh, there's Melania with her cough. She's not doing live events because her cough is lingering. Do they embrace each other? Oh, they each have matching masks. I guess that's a thing now. That the potential first ladies wear matching masks. So Melania is wearing a mask, Joe's wearing a mask, Dr. Biden's wearing a mask, but Donald Trump is not wearing a mask. That is an image for you. No one's shaking hands. Donald Trump doesn't even approach the moderator. Fascinating. You could tell a lot through those final minutes. Man. Is Ivanka exiting? Is she wearing a mask? She's wearing a mask. They were forced to wear a mask. Well, as we watch Kristen Welker exit the stage, I love watching debates. I love how, people love to crap on the moderators. And I, in all honesty, I don't think it's an easy job. And I think they're working within the confines of the rules that have been
Now it's time
negotiated.
to hear from you and get your reaction to this final debate.
I'm muting them as we talk. But I think it's important to watch this. So, this is a really tough job. And the debate commission, which is supposed to be nonpartisan, I don't know what nonpartisan is. Maybe it's balanced. Maybe it's as nonpartisan as they can try to be. Let's stop sharing this as we wait for Michael to join. The debate commission, the two campaigns, just backstory here, generally speaking, for all campaigns, but it's not necessarily true. Give me 1 second. I got to get this thing. Oh my God. They're like taking over my screen. I don't know what's happening. Here we go. All right. So the debate commission, they're working with a set of rules the two campaigns have negotiated on. They decide if they want podiums or if they want to be seated. They decide if there's a plastic plexiglass or not. They decide how long their opening statements are. They negotiate these things behind the scenes. So the moderator's really dealing with a set of rules and whatever the two sides have negotiated on. And they're working within those confines. And of course, the candidates have their own personality types, and it's not easy to moderate any presidential debate with such partisanship. It's not easy to moderate debates with 17 candidates if you are coming from a network that has a real agenda too. It's not easy. And so I think there are a lot of moderators who, it's a really tough time, right? But I think honestly, having watched a ton of these, I think she did an extraordinary job. I think she really did. You didn't seem to hear that the mic was muted at any point, maybe a couple moments, but it was very, very light, and it wasn't something that was clear that he was talking into Donald Trump was talking into a microphone that had been muted. But I think that Kristen Welker did an extraordinary job, and she deserves that credit. So I just want to start off with that while we wait for Michael. I think he's jumping in right now. There we go. All right. So lots of topics. I want to go over this with Michael, but just from the top, I will say, gotta hand it to Biden. Right now, this is a debate between Biden and Trump. Disagree with a ton of what he said, and I was actually surprised by a few things he said, which is very Biden. Don't forget, Biden was the one who just said that gays deserve the right to marry, and then suddenly had it become policy. This is sort of how Biden works, right? He is impulsive. He may not be thinking through things all the time. I'm going to take my glasses off because you guys are commenting that you're getting the reflection. I think one thing that I've learned, having been part of the Obama campaign in 2008 and into 2012 in a different capacity, and watching them shift so far from what Obama campaigned on. I mean, Obama in 2008 was the anti-war candidate, and then he ended up inheriting two wars and did not really pull back at all, as we know. So the moral compass of Obama was sort of lost along the way. He went from being somebody who was solidly anti-war. That was his issue that defined him in the primaries. And yet it was lost along the way. So there was always this question of like, well, who is Obama? Who is Obama? And that went really well with Biden. But Biden was a different character because Biden came out of decades in the Senate. He was elected at 29. He took office at 30. His first issue that he put forward was campaign finance reform, of all things. But he was always, when you're a creature of the Senate, look at Johnson. Go back and look at history. Look at Johnson. You're a creature of the Senate. You're a creature of understanding pressure points and what can be moved and when they can be moved and how to negotiate and how to meet people in the middle. And he's an ultimate tactician, but that's actually a plus, as many lefty reporters have mentioned. When you can move somebody and they don't have an actual moral compass, it means that they're not firm to principles. Now, of course, he has his donors. Of course, he has his team. But it's not like he's inheriting the 35 years of Clinton. I mean, that was an empire. And everybody in the Clinton world. I mean, they were even warring with each other. The Bill Clinton folks were warring with the Hillary Clinton folks over territory and contracts. That there was a pure motivation. There were incentives. There was incentive structure. There was money. There was a vision. There was a pure neoliberal vision. But Biden basically said today, that he was wrong on the crime bill, and then started talking about clemency. And to be fair, he was right. They did release 38,000 prisoners. They did push to end private prisons. They did these things to make up for the damage of the 90s that Biden was a big part of with the crime bill. And he also made a very, I don't agree, but I'm recognizing it, a thoughtful case around climate. When Michael comes in from the Humanist Report, we're waiting for him. I think he's doing a quick wrap up on his show, because he has a show too. We gotta balance, right? I want to talk about why it took them so long to get to the 3 most important crises. Okay, COVID was at the top, clearly one of the top 4, the most important crisis that we're facing. But it wasn't until I believe it was 10. Hang on, Michael's joining us right now. I'll ask him. Save that. I'm super excited. Hey. Michael! Look at you.
How's it going?
It's great. How are you?
I'm doing well. We had to wrangle the dogs first.
The actual dogs.
Yeah, the actual dogs. Yeah, make sure that they're all in their spaces with their toys and their bones. But yeah, all good.
I thought you were doing a little commentary here because it's these crazy nights.
Yeah. Trying to collect my thoughts on all of this. That was interesting.
Yeah, I was giving a little premise as to Biden being a little bit more malleable and why he's a little bit more malleable as a creature of the Senate who hasn't been conditioned to 35 years of Clintonian politics, and he's not 9,000 people aren't dependent on him and haven't built their lives around him being president. So he's a little bit more malleable in some areas, and I think that actually creates an opening. But I just want to ask you, because I was starting to lead into this. So this debate went on for an hour and a half, right? And it wasn't until we hit the 59-minute mark that they brought up the economy.
Right.
And then soon after that, the biggest uprising of our history, racial justice. And then soon after that, it was climate change. Let's just save that till the end when everyone's asleep.
Yeah.
What the F is going on with NBC? Even though I think Kristen Welker was a very good moderator, I don't think she's setting those that's coming from the top.
Yeah. I'd agree. I think that she did do a pretty good job, comparatively speaking. It was weird how we started off on what we should have discussed immediately, COVID-19. That's at the forefront of everyone's minds. But yeah, it took a really long time to get to these incredibly important issues. I will say, on the subject of Kristen Welker, there were some things that irritated me about her framing of questions. This isn't a unique criticism of her. She called out Joe Biden on healthcare or asked him about his incrementalist approach as if he's going to lead us to socialism. I mean, I wish. But I mean, yeah, everything being stacked that's really super important towards the end definitely irritated me. And you can kind of tell that Joe Biden lost a little bit of steam towards the end as well, which maybe it could have gone better for him. But I will say, I think that Joe Biden did do a pretty good job. I don't know that I'm going to say he was at the same level that he was at in that Bernie Biden debate. I think that was probably his best performance since, Paul Ryan or Sarah Palin. But he did do really well tonight. I think that Trump, there were moments where he did actually make some persuasive arguments against Joe Biden if you don't know that he's lying. That's a caveat.
Right.
So
what were some of those? Let's
So one of the main things that he talks about, and let me go over my notes here because I haven't had a chance to go over this yet, is the COVID-19 stuff. Well, that was in the beginning. So when it comes to COVID-19, he says the same thing over and over again to try to defend himself. I guess this isn't a moment where he was more persuasive, probably more towards climate change. He was more persuasive. I'm trying to remember. But let me just get to the thing about COVID-19. So when it comes to COVID-19, every single time you could predict exactly what he's going to say when he's defending himself. China, he wanted to do the ban. Nobody else wanted to do it. And that might initially play well with his own like supporters, but he was privy to information that nobody else had in government. Like he was at these briefings that told him about the severity of this. That's what he was communicating to Bob Woodward. So, I mean, that's not very persuasive. But in terms of what he actually was persuasive at against Joe Biden, I think that the see, now I'm blanking on it. I said it and I need to remember. It was towards the crime bill, I think, actually. It was crime bill and leading into climate change. So on the crime bill, let me try to collect my thoughts. He brought up the crime bill and he tried to hit Biden for that. But part of it is like, that's persuasive at a minimum. He doesn't know the specifics about the crime bill. He doesn't necessarily state why the crime bill is bad. So if he brings that up, at first it's like, whoa, and then it just goes nowhere. And then he brings up super predator. That was Hillary Clinton. That was not Joe Biden. Joe Biden said predators, but super predator is like a really specific like form of dehumanization. Like that was the word that Hillary used, not Joe Biden. But the problem is that like as you know, Donald Trump is hitting Joe Biden on all of this, I guess, making the law and order argument null and void, that Biden isn't tough. This time, I guess the narrative is that he's too tough. Biden has really good responses to this.
That's a good point. That's actually a really good point. He's not tough enough, and then he's too tough. Which is it?
Yeah. So, I mean, are we going to talk about law and order like for the next couple of days until the election takes place? Or is it that Joe Biden was just too tough? He ruined all these lives and he had 8 years to act and he didn't want to do anything. I'm glad that, you know, Joe Biden brought up that Republicans blocked the agenda. But like the thing about Trump and most of the things that he said that could have landed on Joe Biden is that Joe Biden actually did have pretty good responses. So the fracking thing, what irritated me a lot about the vice presidential debate is that like baked into that entire conversation was this underlying assumption that fracking was good and it shouldn't be banned. And Kamala did not do a good enough job at pushing back on that. Joe Biden didn't either this time, to be clear, but I think that Joe Biden was better at like standing his ground towards the end of climate change, even though he was getting a little bit sleepy, for lack of a better word. We all were, I think, to be fair. He talked about phasing out the fossil fuel industry. And on top of that, he did another thing that besides like fracking, the climate change portion was really great. But him talking about phasing out the fossil fuel industry, I think that if you saw Trump's face, he thought it's over. Are you listening, Texas and Pennsylvania? Not gonna land the way that he thinks it is.
I agree with you. I think, you know, looking at, even though polling for fracking in the last couple of weeks, and granted this stuff is all over the place and it depends on who's doing the polling and you got to look at the crosstabs and all that, but generally speaking, the polling approval for fracking has gone up. When it was down, people were disapproving, especially in the Democratic Party, they were disapproving fracking. And now that could bounce back very quickly for a lot of reasons. That's folks who probably didn't even know what fracking was, to be honest, that moved that poll. But you look at climate change just as an issue. And like, if there's one thing to say, Biden was so firm in taking on the fossil fuel industry in a way that like my eyes bopped out of my head.
I was shocked, yeah.
I don't think Obama would have done that. I don't think Kamala would have done that. But this is like the weird personality of Biden. I struggle to give him too much credit because it's still Biden. But that was like him being like, no, climate change is real. Why are we debating this? I've looked at the 5 polls that say most Americans believe climate change is real. And he sat down with the Sunrise people. And I think that stuff may get into his head a little bit. Just like, you know, sitting down with the LGBTQ community and realizing like, oh yeah, they deserve why are we debating this? Like what? And then saying it, and then suddenly it's a policy that they have to live by in the White House. So, I mean, I think you're right about that. It was very strange. Like, it's just not going to hit for Trump because ultimately, at least the voters that are undecided still believe that climate change is real.
Yeah, and Joe Biden, at least when it comes to rhetoric, assuming that he followed through, that would be great. But like on the rhetoric alone, if you're watching and you're not like as glued to politics as you and I or people watching this, you're going to think, wow, that makes sense. I agree. Climate change is an existential threat and we're running out of time. Joe Biden said those things. That just saying those things, if he said nothing else, he still did way better than Trump. Trump is so cringeworthy talking about crystal clear water after he like gutted the EPA. I mean, how do you even like take him seriously? You can tell like the minute it comes up, he talks about, oh, I want crystal clear water. We want the cleanest air, beautiful air. It's like, dude, you're in over your head. And he doesn't like, he hasn't even thought about it. Like he doesn't even have a crafted response. The difference was night and day. One thing that I want to bring up though, that actually shocked me, which I was very worried about for Joe Biden, was the minimum wage.
Yes.
Joe Biden crushed it on the minimum wage.
So good. What?
I was like, okay, the minute that came up, I was like, oh God, here we go. Here we go, Joe. Fucking just blow it right here. Face plant, it's over. Because automatically, you know, we start with this position that minimum wage increase bad because Trump he did that. And that's why I think that like the fracking polls that you cited earlier, the reason why fracking has more support now, because the way that they are framed at these debates is so like authoritative that like you buy into it and have to even question yourself like, whoa, maybe I'm wrong about fracking, which you're not. It's just, you know, the framing, the narrative there. So Trump, you know, he said all the things that you would expect an anti-minimum wage person to say. It wasn't like overly Trumpian. So I thought, oh God, like Biden's going to back down. And he didn't back down. He was phenomenal when it comes to the minimum wage. I don't know if I have anything about that specifically in my notes, but basically he talked about like first responders and how like, you know, they're not making a living wage and minimum wage. Like I was honestly like, he pleasantly left me pleasantly surprised. I was expecting him to completely botch this area, but he did good.
It's almost like so I had a personal experience with his campaign manager, Jennifer O'Malley Dillon. She was the chair of the Unity Reform Commission. I got to know her pretty well on the commission, and I'm of the belief that unless you are somebody who is like a Bill Clinton, for instance, somebody who has a firm belief, like Bill or frankly Trump, like Bill Clinton knows who he is. He knows who butters his bread. He knows who his consultants are. But at the end of the day, or Andrew Cuomo, they're still making the decision. They don't go to a committee to decide. Do you know what I mean? Andrew Cuomo, well, I hate him, right? But he does this thing where he doesn't hesitate. Like the way that Pelosi, like they're trying to delay so they can figure out like how to please all the factions. They can come out with like a really good stimulus, even better than the HEROES Act, or everything is a delay for Democrats because they rule by committee of donors and corporations and lobbyists and whatever. And it's like the more people you have ruling by that committee, and I understand the joke there if people want to bring up committee ruling from our side, it delays the process, right? But Andrew Cuomo is so like dictatorial, and you know Bill Clinton was so in his craft. They didn't have to rule by committee. I don't actually think that Biden has to rule by committee either, but I also don't think his committee is that strong. Like meaning they're not as firm in their beliefs. And I say that because he isn't. It's not the Clinton folks. A lot of them pushed out. There's like still weird factions and like the Obama versus Clinton folks.
Right.
And Jen O'Malley Dillon, having worked with her, she was probably one of the most pleasant people to work with on the Unity Reform Commission.
Wow.
Meaning she wanted campaign finance reform. I was really surprised. There were factions from the Clinton appointees and her, which now looking back, and I'm like, oh, clearly like they were appointing Joe because she got the chairmanship of the Unity Reform Commission. So, and I say that because he just has these moments where I'm just like, wait, what are you doing? Like, he just like throws something out there. If you don't make it about like Bernie Sanders, if you don't make it about some person he went to war with and he like now hates because he's like had a fight with them, if you make it just about like a policy and you put some like kids in the room to like tell them, hey, you know, the climate, man, it matters, man. He like turns on it. It's it's like all manipulation, and because he doesn't have this cadre around him telling him what to do. So if you ask him a question, suddenly he's like, "Well, yeah, we got to get off of fossil fuels. What are we really having this conversation right now? Listen, yeah, you know, I'm not against fracking, but it's going to be phased out anyways." That's Josh Fox's position. That's Bill McKibben's position, by the way. They just think that no matter if you end it or not, it's going to take 5 to 10 years. And if you invest in solar, if you invest in wind, that's going to phase out fracking. And he just said that.
Yeah. It's like he almost like went off script, but not really. And when he said he wanted to end subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, like my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, wait, what?
What?
Are you serious? Because like I want to say like 5-10 years ago, you'd never catch a Democrat saying this on national television, and you would never believe that they would do that. Now, I'm skeptical that Biden would do something like that. I hope he follows through. I would love if he did that. But the fact that he said it in and of itself, like that's really important, because the framing of all of these questions is always like, we know the Overton window is shifted too far to the right. So everything that comes up, it's always from this perspective of, free market, how are private businesses going to function, yada, 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 neoliberalism 101. So the fact that he actually said things that surprised me, I don't know. I think that it's really going to help him, because for all the things that Trump said that maybe landed, one, I don't think it's enough. At this point in time, Trump needed a really, really great performance, but not just that, he needed Joe Biden to do poorly as well. So the stars kind of needed to align. I don't think that happened. But with Joe Biden actually saying a couple of key things, minimum wage, no more subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, I mean, I'm not going to say that it's over, but I don't think that the trajectory of this race is going to change after this debate. I think that the Trump people are like probably feeling a little bit better because he didn't faceplant, because that last debate was a disaster. And he knows it, hence why he was much more calm and restrained this time. Yeah. But I think that like Joe Biden just not faceplanting, I don't know what they gave him, lots of sugar, something else, whatever they did, a good nap. Yeah, whatever happened, it worked out for him. But on top of that, there were some added bonuses that I think are really going to help Joe Biden, especially with young people. Minimum wage being probably one of the most important things, just because that impact materially on people is so concrete. Like just people I know, dozens of people that I know, immediately, if they saw an increase in the minimum wage, their lives would be so much better. So yeah,
it's so interesting you say that, because I have been so angry at the Biden campaign, and I think a lot of us have, for really moving to the right, appealing to Republicans, the John Kasichs of the world, the whoever else Republicans, the Steve Smiths, whatever, and yet I don't know if I'm going to go as far. We'll see on election night if that strategy, which didn't work for Hillary for a whole lot of reasons, because they simultaneously ignored working people. And this is like in the midst of a pandemic where, I think that like Joe Biden has done more on the ground work in Wisconsin. I know, because they were there tonight. The team was there tonight. Than Hillary Clinton did in 2016. So Hillary Clinton just like ignored working people and ignored young people and ignored all the Bernie folks. They hated us because her consultants hated us, had no populism in whatsoever. It was folks we sat down with in a room. As a former Bernie surrogate, a bunch of us surrogates got in a room at the convention and said, like, you got to talk about TPP. You got to reverse your position on TPP, which hasn't been brought up, by the way, which is really weird. You got to reverse your position on fracking, which has been brought up a lot, and it wasn't even brought up at all in 2016. And that will move the votes in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio. Well, Ohio a little bit different, but we brought these things up, and it was reported on in December in the Daily Beast. We shared the recordings with a reporter, and they ignored us. And as a result, they lost by enough votes when it comes to fracking that would have won them. Enough votes when it comes to TPP, it would have won them over. And then to find out through the autopsies, like shattered the book, that they didn't have operations in place, that Bill Clinton was telling Robbie Mook, like, you got to do something, got to go into, and Robbie Mook pushed Bill Clinton out. I mean, these are, and by the way, also pushed Jen O'Malley Dillon, who's now running Biden's campaign out. So, like, these were the problems in 2016, and they didn't abandon the Republican strategy, and that really frustrates, I think, a lot of us. But what I'm noticing is, like, right at the end, kind of like when they need that excitement to go over the top, I think they could have done it simultaneously, but they're starting to lean into policies that you and I would, vote on first, right?
Yeah.
With that being said, they still are talking about a cabinet full of conservatives, and I don't know. I mean, who knows if that's even real? It's just maybe like to speak to donors. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that their policy is their strategy's changed?
I will say, definitely compared to 2016, their team is much more savvy. The difference between Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, I think maybe he is to the left of her on some issues. But what really matters is the fact that she didn't really talk about what she wanted to do. The only time when we got policy pitches was when Bernie Sanders was like at those events. And it was very clear, like she just let Bernie talk. And like she herself would never bring it up. The difference is that, Biden, he is courting Republicans, but he hasn't necessarily changed too much in terms of like the left. Like I think that he at least knows that he can't go too far in the other direction without losing the left. And Hillary she just, she said she said famously in that town hall with Rachel Maddow, when she was asked, like, what are you doing to get Bernie supporters? She said, I'm winning. So it's like, you have no choice. I think that their team is doing better in terms of like trying to, if they're going to pursue Republicans, which is a bad strategy, they're not totally abandoning like the left. A lot of people point out, well, if you look at Biden's policy platform, it is much more progressive. And that's true. I'll grant them that. I don't necessarily know how much of that Joe Biden will pursue because every candidate is going to have a really bold agenda. But what are we going to get? And so in terms of like your question, have they shifted? I kind of feel like they have, because at that first debate, it seemed like Joe Biden was backing away from a public option. And then tonight he seemed to lean into a little bit more. Although I will say,
what does Biden care? What is that though?
The thing that I will say is he's calling it a public option, but if it's means tested, it's not a real public option. But then he tweeted out like Biden care, saying that you can buy into it. So the details matter. So we need to see. But the fact that he's using the word public option is interesting because it seemed like he was kind of avoiding that word. And, he was talking about tweaks to the ACA, which, I mean, that means nothing to me. It's like I have the ACA, like I have the Affordable Care Act. I'm a beneficiary of it, and it's terrible. But I mean, it's better than nothing, of course. But I mean, like we want real, like bigger leaps than just incrementalism. So, he's talking more about a public option. So, I mean, at least rhetorically and optically speaking, it seems like he, hasn't gone, fully out of, I don't know what I'm trying to say, because it's like, I do kind of see what you're talking about. Like, he's not moving left, but
like, he doesn't have we don't know where he is, and that
right. He's all over the place.
With that being said, like, if we show up on Inauguration Day, or honestly, way before that, guys, and like, if for those of you listening, the day he gets officially elected, knock on wood, I freaking hope to God, we show up on the doorstep of the White House. As my friend Arun Chowdhury, he was on our show today. He worked in the White House, in the Obama White House. He was a Bernie person too. He was the first videographer of the White House, and he said something like there was this like one protester. This is so powerful. He goes, there's this one protester who'd show up every day at the White House outside, at the park outside. I forgot the name of the park, and you could hear him inside the White House from any room of the White House. And he said, but there weren't masses outside the White House with Obama. If there were, they could have heard them. Mm-hmm. Trump clearly hears them, without a doubt. It's like getting to his psyche. I mean, it's been going on for 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm just getting to Melania's psyche. She's like, get the hell out of here. But if on November 4th, or whenever they declare, November 15th, hopefully, or December 1st, or whatever it is, they declare it, we show up on the streets and we demand Medicare for all first, because that is our existential crisis. That and the economy are, the fact that it came to the end of the debate, I mean, the COVID, great. I'm glad they talked about COVID at the top, but they didn't really talk about healthcare. They talked about how they handled COVID, the past. They didn't talk about what are we going to do now? What are we going to do moving forward? How are we going to refund the CDC? I mean, Trump has ruled under austerity. He's way before pandemic. He sliced away the CDC and then was warned and didn't do anything. We know the story. But what are we going to do moving forward? Because that's ultimately what people want to know. Their futures. Climate is their futures. Economy is their future. Education wasn't brought up. Social Security wasn't brought up. A shit ton on Russiagate and Iran. And like, even if those things are happening, as David Axelrod said the day after the election, or a few days after the election in 2016, even if any of that's happening because all countries try to meddle that have any sort of power, ours, theirs, whatever. It's just a given. They've been doing it for decades. It's not a new thing.
Yeah.
David Axelrod said it should have never been so close. That was your
Exactly.
excuse.
Yeah.
So why is it dominating 45 minutes of conversation still to this day?
Yeah, that was frustrating to have, the debate go from a substantive discussion, well, at least on one side with Biden, on COVID-19 to Russia and Iran. And it's like, as you said, this isn't a new phenomenon. This has always been happening. We meddle in so many different elections. Thankfully, socialists won back, a government in Venezuela after falling into fascism after we meddled there. This was not a good portion of the debate. And I feel like the moderator, and she probably wasn't in control, but this was brought up because it's topical, because of the big report from Trump's FBI director about the Iran meddling, which, I'm sorry.
And then immediately after, the New York Times is like, no, but Russia meddles way more.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on with my news alerts right now? I'm like airing a show. I'm like,
each side has their own thing. This is what it's going to be going forward. Democrats will say Russia, Republicans will say Iran, and progressives will say shut the fuck up. Or am I allowed to cuss? Hopefully it's...
Just don't say the Q word. That's all.
Okay.
That's affected things I've noticed.
Okay.
I don't know. You're a pro. You do this stuff. Right? You're way better than me.
Well, I don't know if you're broadcasting to anywhere else besides YouTube. So
just YouTube.
Oh, okay.
I learned from the pro. Okay, so I want to talk. Actually, first off, I just have to give a couple shout outs because you know the drill. So first off, all the people who've done super chats, I love you. Tim Bob Dunn, I was happy to hear that what Biden said about oil dependency. Yes, exactly. I know it's hard to believe him, but it made me feel good and better about voting for him. 100%. For the rest of you who've done super chats, it was during the debate. I've missed you. Dorsey, I'm managing it because it's nighttime because Dorsey does a morning show. So I've missed you, but we will get to it tomorrow, I promise. And then special love to Akira. Got a text from your parents saying that you're watching and you know me. And Akira is a young activist, a very, very, very young activist who's very excited about watching us on right now and seeing faces that he recognizes. And then he wonders where Bernie is. And so do we, I think. So special love to you, Akira. I'm glad that you're able to stay up late and watch the debate and you're learning about politics at such a young age. And love to your parents, Suling and Sam, too. So, okay. Enough with that.
That's awesome.
Listen, it's like, imagine if Joy Reid did that.
I know. They would never.
No, never. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about voting because you and I had different experiences in 2016. And what I really appreciate about our friendship is that we recognize it's solidarity in the end, and we have to be comrades, and it's okay if we don't agree on things at all times, but at the end of the day, we're on the same side, and we have to move forward as a force and work things out however we can in the evolution. In 2016, I believe was toxic.
Yeah.
They were evil. There were death threats. There were thousands of tweets coming at us. I mean, it went on until basically the Biden campaign took over. But you voted for Jill Stein. Right? I live in New York. I'll just leave it at that. I didn't vote for Jill Stein. I'll leave it at that. But I did advocate for voting for Hillary Clinton. I did it on cable news, and then they claimed I was a Jill Stein voter afterwards. So that was what Neera Tanden did. But this time around, I mean, it's obviously very different. We know Donald Trump is a neo-fascist. Running against a neoliberal, and I think that those of us who are thinking in the best interest of the future of this country, the most vulnerable, realize that there is a difference between neoliberalism and neo-fascism,
yes,
even if one's a path towards it or not. And you have come out and you're supporting Joe Biden, if you haven't figured that out after all this. But you did a great video because some of our comrades, some of our allies, some of our friends have been really focused on resistant to supporting Joe Biden, and I feel you on it. But can you reiterate your case? Because I thought it was just so powerful. I watched that video and I was really moved by it. I think you did a great job. And very
thank
gracefully.
you.
Very
thank
graceful.
you. One thing that I'll say first of all is that it sucks that this issue is so divisive, and I think that the reason why it's so divisive is because people, myself included, kind of based our entire identities on who we vote for. And that's like, if you vote with me, we're in the same crowd. When in actuality, that's not what left solidarity looks like. And I did get my vote. I'm in Oregon, so they mail it to us pretty early. I already voted for Joe Biden. And once I sealed that up, I honestly almost had like tears in my eyes. Like, oh my God, this is the way it's going to be from now on. And then I'm like, okay, Mike, you're being a drama queen. Just put the fucker in the ballot box. And then I was fine because it's like, okay, this isn't that big of a thing. But anyway, I'm like a different person when you compare 2016 to 2020, because a lot has changed for me just personally. So in 2016, I was new to YouTube. We didn't even cross like, I think 50,000 subscribers by the time. Yeah, no, I was super, super new. And I thought, I have this platform and I'm going to use it irresponsibly. So I'm not going to tell people in swing states like, don't vote for Hillary Clinton. That's no, because we don't want Trump to win, of course. But for me, I thought, I can safely vote in a blue state for Hillary Clinton or for Jill Stein and not have to vote for Hillary Clinton. And it's fine. You know what I mean? Because I think that I'm just one person at the end of the day. Sure, I have all these viewers. But I think that people are smart enough to make their own decision, and they are largely. Because, I was so distraught from the 2016 Democratic Party primary, like the DNC sabotaging Bernie Sanders. And I thought, if I don't take a stand against this, then it's going to happen again, when the next Bernie comes around. But the problem with my analysis there was that it wasn't rooted in theory. Back then I was a social democrat, and I was probably like way more liberal than I was like on the scale between social democrat, like socialism and capitalism. Like I probably was like maybe in the middle. So, my theory of change was that it just comes down to voting. You just got to like not vote for the Democratic Party and they're going to have to cater to you. But, that was proven wrong because they don't care. We have Joe Biden now. We don't have a more left-wing candidate this time. We almost did. But that has changed. And now that, I feel as if I'm a socialist 100%. I'm anti-capitalist 100%. My theory of change is different now. My theory of change isn't just as easy as voting, because things will change if I vote a certain way. So I do still think that third parties play a really important role in terms of like trying to keep the Overton window. Like maybe the Greens pull Dems to the left a little bit and Libertarians, towards the center for Republicans. But I really overestimated how influential those third parties are. I do think that like Jill Stein was great at getting the Green New Deal and student debt cancellation, into the mainstream as much as she can. But, in 2016, I thought that, look, I can't bring myself to vote for Hillary Clinton. I would if I were in a swing state, but in a deep blue state, I'm not going to do that. Maybe since everyone hates Hillary and Trump, we'll try to get the Greens above 5%. Right. That didn't work. They got to 1%. So, there's no, that didn't bring about anything. Unfortunately, I wanted it to. And now we're at this point where, even the people who exclusively advocate for a third party, they're not even unified. Like there's Green Party, there's Movement for a People's Party, there's people that just want to be independents, there's a Socialist Party. So you have all those divisions.
Communists in some states.
Communists in some states.
I love it.
That's kind of cool. Yeah. So you have those divisions of the people who exclusively say third party. Like that's one part of the left. And then the other part of the left is to, vote for Joe Biden, try to work within the system. And all of the, like both leftists, both camps, they're on the same team, but they're fighting within each other. And the entire left is divided. And so for me, like I'm trying to not overemphasize, like I did in 2016, how important our votes is while still maintaining that voting is important. Like it's not everything, basically. Like you shouldn't base your entire identity on voting. And for me, the thing that did it, even if I'm in a blue state, I don't want to in any way, shape or form help fascists. I don't want to be a useful idiot for Donald Trump. And I don't say that like people voting third party are useful. I'm saying me as someone with a platform. Yeah. So like my friend spoke to me about this, who is voting for Joe Biden. And she kind of explained that, well, listen, here's the way that it sounds when you tell all of your viewers that you're not going to vote for Joe Biden. that you're just like this super principled guy. You're never going to have to suck it up and vote for the lesser of two evils. But at the same time, you always have that caveat. But, if I were in a swing state, I'd vote for Joe Biden. So you get to be principled and more morally pure while other people have to hold their nose and vote. And that's a little bit messed up. And that really resonated with me because it got me to think, okay, this is different now. This isn't just like I'm some young YouTuber starting out. Like, I have a really big platform now and I want to use it responsibly. So that's part of it.
No, that's kind of what hit me personally. And I mean, we all see things through our personal lenses, right?
Right.
And when you said that, I mean, I've had conversations with comrades, allies, people in media, organizers. Thank you, Fats Domino. Sorry, someone's giving us a lot of love. It's like popping up on my phone. Thank you. But behind the scenes about what do we do? Because it was so close. It came down to 20,000 votes in Wisconsin, 70,000 votes across all the swing states in 2016. And Trump is playing a game of voter suppression. The Republican Party is playing a game of voter suppression and intimidation and COVID. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. There is a surge in voter registration, but even in swing states that are very important, it's a little higher for Republicans than normal.
Right, in Florida and Pennsylvania.
Exactly. So we really don't have a great sense of how close it's going to be. And so when we were having these conversations behind the scenes, we're thinking, oh my God, like, if there's a collective, like you have a ton of subscribers and I have a small universe, we're a new show, but
doing
like,
great.
Very sweet. But whatever it takes with the voice and the platforms we have, and I have a social media platform and I have an email list, I'm part of an organization, and I have a lot of friends and allies out there who have big voices who are looking for guidance on how to kind of balance this space of like not being ridiculed by some folks in the left or who knows where. Like, honestly, I think a lot of folks popped up in the last few weeks. I'm just like, I'm not really sure if they're part of the left. And then there are people who are like actually part of the left who are not comfortable with the vote for Joe Biden. And that's okay. But I thought about it and it was like, well, what's the worst thing could happen if Trump got reelected? In a lot of ways, everything. But let's just look at it from the media perspective. For those of us in the media who do want to continue criticizing the Democrats and Joe Biden, and trust me, I get it. I personally get it. I've had hit pieces written about me that are complete smears and lies. I'm suing people because of it. Like, I had a death threat 2 days ago. I really personally get it. And I don't know how many times I have to say this. I get it, okay? But I also understand that in 4 months, from my personal perspective, we could have an internet that just swipes out all leftist shows. All of them. They're already taking on the media. They're already rounding people up in Portland and putting them into buses. You think anarchist cities, they're defunding cities. They're amping up police forces, and ICE was patrolling neighborhoods 3 years ago in diverse neighborhoods. Who's going to report on this? If this is what happens in Lebanon. Just recently in Lebanon. Happened in Egypt. It happened in Iran. It happened with all these uprisings in Venezuela. It happens when these uprisings happen. The first thing that they do, the fascists do, is they shut down the communications and the centralized way of organizing. And so if you're going to get like an extra $10,000 in like Google ads that month, think about 4 months from now, because you don't want to support Joe Biden. If I can move 10 votes, I was on Facebook the other day, Michael. Oh my God, I don't know what I was doing. I tweeted about this.
That tweet resonated with me a lot because I can relate.
I don't know. I am not a Facebook person. I have it for a lot of reasons. Like, it's kind of like a Rolodex. It's also, our professional page was like built up through that. It's like stupid media stuff.
Yep.
And a guy I knew, I dated. 18 years ago. He's on my Facebook page and he's talking about, and I'm losing my mind. And and no one's commenting, and he's actually talking about the Greek community because we're both Greek, and he's like, it didn't make any sense, and I was like, most Greeks aren't conservative because they like realized they became no, the visa laws is all immigrant groups. The visa laws changed in the late 60s and 70s and tied it to how much money you had. And that's why the recent waves of immigrants coming from Greece to India, unless you're a refugee, it is tied to your financial interests. How much money you have in the bank, how much, if you're connected to somebody who can sponsor you, it's all financial based. Whereas my family came in when it was like, get on a boat. My grandfather snuck on a boat. Like, there was no financial base. So his whole thing is Greeks used to be Democrats, but then they realized Democrats didn't stand for democracy and they wanted to keep their money. And it's like, oh my God, you idiot. So I went into this debate and I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this, Michael? And then I thought, if I can convince 3 voters, because he's from Arizona, 3 voters in Arizona, it could make a difference.
Yeah.
Because I have a platform. I went on Fox News yesterday. I don't care. Mm-hmm. I'm like, if I can sway 3 of you, I've done my job.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I'll be honest. If I didn't have this platform, I probably would still vote for Joe Biden, if I'm being honest, because I still do think that there isn't a cohesive strategy around the left to build a third party. We need electoral reform. I've said this 1,000 times, and the people who are the loudest about wanting a third party, rightfully so, don't understand that there is legislation that's already been introduced by Don Byers Jr. that would allow for the manifestation of more parties. Nobody's promoting that. So if we don't promote this, then we're just going to have a third party where we are permanently disempowered. And I want us to have power. Like, it's not just about like me doing what I think will make a difference. Like I have to do what I think is best for people. And so when I hear people, or when I see tweets from people saying, oh my God, I hate Joe Biden, but please vote for him because I am a beneficiary of DACA and my life hangs in the balance, I can't like just, pretend like there's this false equivalence and turn away from that. I can't do that. I can't pretend like, there's no difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. They're both terrible, yes, but it's degrees of terribleness. And once you kind of just accept for the foreseeable future, we're getting neoliberalism, then it makes it easier to make a realistic decision, right? Because you realize, okay, not voting for Joe Biden isn't going to stop neoliberalism. It's just going to let the fascists win, which puts us further away from our goals. So yes, it is incrementalist, but at the same time, how do we make progress but also not regress further backwards? And that's how, you have to walk this balance. And that's why this is so tricky and divisive, because leftists are doing 2 things. We're trying to push the Democratic Party left, or take it over, preferably. But at the same time, we're trying to stop fascists from winning.
That's right.
So it's like you're walking this fine line to where you want to make sure that the Democrats know that we have leverage and we're going to play hardball with them. But at the same time, the fascists have gone so insane. Like, the Republican Party is off the spectrum. Like, this is not a salvageable party. Like, they have to collapse or be taken over by moderates. They're out of this world. So we have to really balance that and be mindful of everyone who they're kind of on the margins, right? Yes. I'm not, like, I'm this privileged dude, right? I'm a cisgender male. My trans comrades are getting fucked under Donald Trump. That's right. Discriminations in healthcare are fine now because Donald Trump permitted it. We're having to refight battles that we already had because of the Supreme Court. Like, are we seriously going to talk about abortion in 2020, 2021?
What on earth? I mean, yeah.
Like, I don't want to have these battles again. So, Joe Biden for now is a tool we can use. And I think that David Dole puts this best. Like, you're just picking who you want to fight. This isn't like you're marrying them. You're not like committing allegiance to them. It's just a simple thing to do. And like, that made it easier for me, because it was always about, like, to me anyways, and part of it was because emotionally I was still like so distraught after 2016. Like, I felt so betrayed because I was so loyal to Democrats, and they messed it up for all of us. But to me, it's like, look, voting is like the least amount you can do. Like, you should do it, but that's not the end of your political activity. You don't, get activated or animated once every 4 years. Like, that's not the way that it should work. And if it is, you're failing. So, to me, it's just my entire theory of change is different now, because I am a socialist. And I think that now I understand how capitalism really, influences both of these parties. They're not specifically shifting to the right because there isn't a big enough Green Party in the country. It's because of capitalist forces. So voting a certain way in and of itself isn't enough to change the institutions and change the parties. But what I will say is that I am 100% willing to work with comrades who want alternatives to the two major parties, because that's really important. But you have to be smart about it. You can't just create a party and hope that it's going to do well. You need electoral reform. And I say this begrudgingly because that's a lot of work. Like starting a party in and of itself, that's tough. But if you want to make it viable, Jesus Christ, talk to New Zealand. They did electoral reform. Talk to Japan. They did electoral reform. It didn't work.
That's it.
It's hard. It's so hard. So, change is like, politics is inherently frustrating. You are always going to be depressed and down, even if we get Medicare for all and a Green New Deal, and it feels like we've won. That change, it'll feel great for a while, but then that will diminish and there'll be more issues that pop up. It's like we're playing whack-a-mole, so we're never going to be satisfied. We're always like angry. There's always going to be injustice. So it's inherently frustrating and slow. That's how our institutions are built. So whatever we can to just like stop the hemorrhaging, that's what we have to do right now. I get that we're not going to make progress under Joe Biden. We'd be lucky if we do. But as long as we stop the hemorrhaging so we can regroup and maybe the left can come together around something, some way to pressure Biden or build a third party with electoral reform first, then we can do that. But for now, the left doesn't know what it wants to do. There's a lot of division on the left. Meanwhile, the centrists and the Democratic Party are 100% unified. The fascists are all in alignment. So it's not going to happen right now. What we want isn't going to happen right now. But one thing that kind of gave me a little bit of hope is that I was listening to a stream with Progressive Voice, Sahil Habibi, shout out to him. And one of his viewers asked him, when do you think we're going to get Medicare for all? And I was just like, I was playing video games, so talking to myself, I said, never. it's never. Bernie's not going to be president. We'll never get it. And his response was, oh, maybe in 20 years. And I thought, oh my God, wait a second.
No.
20 years. That was my response, 20 years. I was like, oh, come on. But then I thought, hang on, that reminds me that we're living in an era and it feels like, it's inescapable, right? Like we can't see past like 2020, let alone like 5 years down the road. But one thing that we have on our side is time. It's not going to be all of these like 95-year-old people in Congress like Mitch McConnell and Dianne Feinstein. The new generation is going to take power, and they're more progressive. They're socialists. So change is coming. It is inevitable because the current trajectory that we're on as a country is unsustainable. Like, it's something's got to give, right? Like the dam's got to open up. I think we're on the cusp of a Green New Deal or a New Deal, like a New Deal type of situation where we see rapid change. It doesn't feel like that right now at the moment, but capitalism is only as strong as society lets it be. But when things start getting really bad, when an eviction crisis happens and people take to the streets, that system, like the powers don't have power. Like the capitalists can't stop a revolution of people in the streets like protesting. And I'm not talking like regime change revolution, because I think we're closer to like a fascist revolution than a socialist revolution. But what I'm saying is like, things are so bad right now. The material conditions that led to Donald Trump are so bad right now, and they're not going to go away if, Joe Biden is elected. So things will change, but it is going to take time. And trying to accept that, even if I do feel cynical, is important, because it's not like, we only operate once every 4 years. It's like, okay, well, now we got to wait 4 years. Oh, now 8 years. That's not the way that it works in actuality. And I think that we have to get out of this electoral mindset, this presidential mindset, really.
Well, I mean, you mentioned such a great point, because a media mentor of mine said to me, it was before Bernie had stepped down, and I just kind of knew there was no path to victory. And it was a couple months before that, and I was really struggling with it because, I had a show, I was going on air, and I wasn't being like the let's fight till the end person, because I knew the electoral pathway, and I was just sort of like,
yeah.
And I was talking to this mentor, and I was really depressed prematurely, and I think some of these folk, obviously after Bernie stepped out, there was way more depression.
Yeah.
And and he said to me, they're all going to be dead. They're all going to be dead. And he said it in this like cold way. They're going to be dead. Like 5 years from now, they're dead. They're gone. Like they're senile or they're dead. I was like, I was laughing so hard, but the reality is they're going to be dead.
It's true.
Their ideas are going to be dead.
Yeah.
Or they're going to be dead. And like Cory Booker, the in-between generation is very small, right? Gen X is kind of a small generation. Is like stuck. Like, and Kamala Harris is the perfect example. Like, she's gonna have. I mean, she wants to be president. If she wants a political, she might inherit the presidency for all we know. She's gonna have to adapt to us.
Yeah.
So on one hand, yes, the neoliberals won. On one hand, yes, like the time for us is not now. But in 11 days, it's us again.
Yeah.
They didn't win. Now they got to answer to us. The Proud Boys, like a small, that was an everything in the Republican Party right now, all of the power that they have is electoralism. And we don't have a campaign for 2 years.
Yes.
So let's show up. Well, I mean, cities is different, but let's show up and show what they need to really be beholden to. Because it's not, they can't get away with Tim Geithner in like the economic crisis, overseeing the economic crisis. They need to have Joe Stiglitz. They need to have Robert Reich's come back from labor. They need to have like Stephanie Kelton, real economists come in and say, break your mindset, because this crisis is beyond anything anybody who's ever been here before knows. Nobody from Wall Street's going to get us out of it. Robert Hockett, who was the attorney for the Fed, knows it more than anybody, and he's on our side. You need to have these folks informing them, understanding what their perspective is, and also recognizing the moment of the crisis that we're in. But we, as a movement, hosts, activists, people online, workers, need to really organize behind this, because we've got monopolies, we've got a minimum wage that's ridiculous, that we're still advocating for a $15 minimum wage, and I will, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to come out with something with another ally of ours talking about $30 minimum wage, something I ran on 2 years ago, because it's not sustainable. Yeah. We're having outdated conversations because they're putting us in the mix of this fight that's been going on for so long. But the truth is, as my mentor said, their ideas are dead, their movement is dead, their leaders are going to be dead pretty soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right.
I mean, it sounds like a little bit
morbid.
Yeah, it sounds like we're being morbid, but in a way, like, it's the truth. It is. I mean, like, you kind of see the way that certain things in history has affected, like, the boomer generation, like the Cold War and the reason why, like, Russiagate was such a huge thing to them, because of these weird cultural things. But the cultural things that affected their generation, like, those things are different for us. Right. Like, we grew up, like, during the Bush years. Like, I had my political awakening as a young college student, hating George W. Bush because of the Iraq War. So we have these different inclinations that I think are going to be conducive to change better, and not just like politicians, but societal change, because you can't ignore an entire society. I mean, you can, but not for too long. And one point of optimism that I do want to always remind people about is all of the candidates who are successful. So in 2016, you could count like the number of candidates on one hand. That was it. That were like Bernie type candidates.
2018, Flores, like two other people.
Yeah, Alex Law, Lucy Flores. On one, it's not a lot, right? In 2018, we saw dozens of candidates run, only a couple victories. This time, I can't keep track of all of the candidates.
Exactly.
Multiple victories, can't keep track of all of those. We have some that will definitely be going to Congress, like Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush. And on top of that, we have others that have won their primaries and maybe going to Congress. So in 2022, Siegel. Mike Siegel, Donna Imam, she's really close, Kara Eastman. So there's so much potential, and we keep doing better and better and better each election cycle, to where we're going to have such a large enough block to where we will be the Democratic Party. And it's frustrating still because it's like, okay, well, that's like 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. And you're saying get off of electoralism. But that's just one part of it. Like, you know, we're all kind of like learning as we go, I feel like. You know what I mean? Because you're never like, nobody has all of the answers. We just have like a theory of what we need to do to affect change. And we're all kind of learning together because society is changing so rapidly. Like humanity has never had to deal with an issue as big as climate change. The closest that it has come to that was like the hole in the ozone layer, which surprisingly the world came together and fixed that. But climate change is incredibly different. It's so complex, and we're going to have to learn how to, survive as a species. And if we don't, we die. So we don't have a choice. You know what I mean? So, it's tough. I think that we're having growing pains as a movement. And I say we, me, being like the left, like the Bernie movement. And I think that because the Bernie campaign happened, we're stronger off because, that showed us that like, we're not just screaming into the ether. Like there is a real demand for this type of politics, left-wing politics. And just the fact that there's that demand there, that shows that there's potential. We just have to harness it. How? I don't know, but we're going to try. We're going to figure it out. We're all, there are different things that we all can do. We each have our role that we play. And, there's going to be growing pains. The left is going to continue, I think, to hate each other and, call each other names and stuff like that. But eventually, I think that, we will get to a place to where we are making a difference. What that's going to look like and when that's going to come is incredibly difficult to say. But, you can't allow the current political situation to, sour your entire view of politics, as easy as that may be, because things change. Things seemed pretty grim in the past. Everyone thought they were going to get obliterated during the Cold War. My mom would tell me about how they were just waiting for nuclear annihilation. And she was a little girl in Hawaii, and they do these drills where you hide under your desk. And, it was just the looming feeling of dread and the apocalypse was upon them then as well. And they got past that. So, there's always going to be this big thing that is going to hold us down. Climate change is our generation's healthcare, COVID right now. So it's a lot. But, we have to learn to not just get carried away with the moment and understand that, we will get through it and there's going to be more problems to fix. It's just, you just keep going. That's the thing. It's like, you don't always have the desire to keep going. And sometimes you just get bogged down, but you don't have a choice, if you are a leftist, because there's always going to be problems. We're never going to see a utopia in our lifetime, certainly. You just always keep fighting for what's right. And there's going to be times where you go backwards. We're kind of in that period where we're regressing quite a bit. But it goes back to the morbid thought that I love, that their ideas are going to die and they're going to kind of die. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to die. Their ideas are going to die. But it's important for us to stay as close to our thought, not to give up, because
right.
Looking at history, there were comrades who sold out. Capital is a powerful thing, and we just have to remember this is a long game. We have generations on our side. We have crises that really require an answer that only we are providing as a movement. And remember, we're all humans at the end of the day, and so people are always focused on their survival. And I understand that there are folks who feel personally betrayed by what's happening, as I have, and I'm sure you have too. But at the end of the day, like, we as a movement, we as a society grow from this, and look to history. So I want to ask you one question before we wrap up, because I've been asking this lately from folks who've been doing this for the last few years and have especially evolved like you have. Is there a book that you've read in the last few years that has influenced your perspective or strategy in particular?
Not necessarily strategy, but Professor Richard Wolff. I read his book, The Occupy Democracy. It was about Occupy Wall Street. And that was really, really, that had a big impact on me, because it made me realize that, wait a second, even though we know that, there's this big fear right now that everyone's going to go to sleep during the Biden years if he's elected, Occupy emerged during the Obama years. And this was about that. And he explained how, capitalism, it interacts with everything in society. On top of that, there's a book by Wendy Brown called Undoing the Demos. And that really had a big impact on me, because it really showed me how capitalism like has its like grubby little claws in everything. Like she talks about the Supreme Court and the entire court system in the United States, how the judiciary has been captured by capital. And so all of these things kind of like in sum have, it has led me to change and kind of change the way that I talk about politics and try to be a little bit more introspective about, you know, it's not just about like Democrat versus Republican. We have to talk about institutions, you know, as people with platforms. And I've been on like a binge reading. Like I got a Kindle, one of those little paperweight things for Christmas last year. And I've read like Nathan J. Robinson's book. I read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, like all these, just so phenomenal. Like, and I've read some of these books before, but just to kind of like get back to like my roots and why I'm a leftist, like all the things that influence me, kind of like just going back to the source material was really helped to kind of like, it helped to recenter me, I feel like. And also, you know, Michael Brooks's book. I read his book, and that really had a huge impact on me because I'm super like, I'm a hater to Republicans and stuff like that. And like his whole philosophy of like, be ruthless to institutions, but reasonable to people. That was kind of reflected in that book. I don't know if he used that specifically, but towards the end, you know, he was very introspective about the left and what we have to do to win over other people. And, you know, that helped me to realize that like, I have to get out of this Twitter bubble that we're all kind of stuck in. Like we're just arguing with each other, but we're not convincing normal people. Most people aren't on Twitter. Like my mom is a great example. Like she was someone who was awakened in 2016 by Bernie Sanders. And then this time she converted a Trump supporter to vote for Bernie Sanders. She got my sister and her husband to vote, register to vote. So it's like, you know, she's like making more of a difference than someone like me who gets on Twitter and bickers back and forth. You know what I mean?
So interesting. Yes. My mom the same way. She has convinced her cousins, her Republican, they're all voting for Biden. I'm like, she's had more of an impact than I have. And I'm like,
yeah. It's like, okay, mom, teach me. I mean, you're the master at all this.
So interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as we know, we shouldn't say that. Like, we give people the tools, we give them the arguments, and who knows what they're doing in their communities, and frankly, who knows who's coming onto our pages too.
It's, you know, that's the thing. I want to know, like, I want to feel like I'm convincing a lot of people. I don't know what that number is. Like, I've gotten a bunch of comments back during the 2017 like net neutrality days. Like, I've had a couple of people say, "Look, I joined on because of your net neutrality videos. I was a Trump supporter." And, you know, him appointing Ajit Pai pissed me off. And now I stayed watching and I'm a progressive. And I'm like, okay, so it's having some kind of an impact. I'm not just like catering to the Twitter left crowd. Like I want to make sure that I'm being better. So, you know, the thing about being an influencer, like I hate that word, but like to have a platform basically is that you get it suddenly and it's like a hurricane. You don't know what to do with it because it's like, this isn't what I planned on doing. I was like going into my second year as a PhD student and I was like going to start teaching. So I was like, this is my life. And now all of a sudden, like I have this platform, like, okay, I guess I'll do this because this is way more fun. But how do I use it? How am I being like effective? Like, do I like, you know, you have all of your insecurities kind of like put on blast initially. And then it's like, okay, you correct all the things that you can correct. And then you try to make sure that, you know, you hone your craft. It's tough because there's no perfect way to do it. And the goal ultimately is to do net positive, like do good in the world, convince people, you know, to come to your side. And sometimes you have to try to like ask yourself, am I doing more harm than good? And, you know, there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's really tough. Some people would say different things, but I've tried to like correct myself over the years. And, you know, I think that if we're not like, if we're just like, if I stick to everything I said before, then that's not good political commentary because people are always changing. You know what I mean? Like we're always adapting. So I can't just be like, well, I said this and I'm still saying this and guess what? I'm right. Nobody cares if I'm right. Nobody cares if my predictions, you know, come to fruition. What they want is, you know, to have me as a resource, one resource of many, hopefully. Yeah. And they're still questioning me, but, you know, someone to, you know, hear this perspective as someone who follows it all the time. But at the same time, you know, it's more than just online. You know, politics isn't just like on YouTube and Twitter. So trying to include that is like my next big thing. How I do that, I don't know. But, you know, it's like I said, it's really tough. You know, you try to do the best you can. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you do a bad job. Sometimes I'm not proud of my commentary. Sometimes I'm not proud of the people I've platformed on my show. Other times I feel like, man, I'm crushing it. I think it's tough.
That's interesting. Okay, I have a lot more questions. Oh my God, it's going so late.
It's okay. I'm gonna be up until like 2 tonight because it takes me so long to do all of my debate videos.
Analysis, right.
And I'm like, okay.
You're so good at this. You're so good at this.
No, you know what it is? It's that it has to be like perfect. So if I could spend like 10 minutes on B-roll on a simple segment where it's like, okay, I'm talking about Joe Biden saying this and Trump saying this. So I want to find a picture, and I want to find a picture that like captures that moment so people don't feel like they're just listening to someone talk and they're kind of like getting the picture in their head. But then I'm like, well, wait, this picture isn't high quality. So then I go search, and I like, before I know it, it's like I spent 15 minutes on a picture on this 30-minute clip. We're in like minute 5. I've been editing for 2 hours. It just, I'm bad. So I still haven't changed that.
But people don't know that about you. Like, I don't know. I don't know any of that. Like, I've called you up and I was like, Michael, I'm starting a show. What mics do I use? What camera do I use? How do I do this? And you were, thank you so much for just like all the advice you gave me. And you know, obviously we're still figuring it out. Like it's still very early in the show, and you know, we're waiting for the big money to come in.
Yes.
But
I'm still waiting too, FYI.
With that being said, though, I don't know how to edit anything. Like, last time I edited was 10 years ago. I took like an editing class, and I was having so much fun and doing short videos. But that was the last time I did it. So it is exceptional that you do this on your own, and your editorial, that you have the space to read, to give amazing commentary. They were always putting content out. It's quality content. The clips are drawn, and even with all of that, you are taking the path that is the most righteous, in my opinion. And I kind of want to reiterate this as much as possible in the next few weeks. Is very easy to go to clickbait. It's very easy to pound on Democrats all day long. We all have those feelings, personally and otherwise.
We all hate them.
Your words. My words. But it you know, you're making a choice, a conscious choice to go with like the historic perspective. Like, what does this mean for history? What does this mean for the outcome? And it's not always sexy and clickbaity. And so I just want to give you a lot, you know, shout out for that, because it's.
Oh, thank you. I try. I mean, I really try. It's hard because I feel like, you know, we're operating with a lot of uncertainties right now. So I don't know what, you know, 5 years from now, if I'm gonna look back and say, hey, you didn't do the right thing, but I just want to know that I like was being as honest and as open as I possibly can be. And one thing that's important is I can't just say what I think people will like the most, which will be the least controversial, because it's super easy to do that. I promise you. If I just like said what I think would cater to a certain amount of people, I think I'd have a lot more subscribers. There'd be less controversy, less people pulling Patreon dollars. But you can't do that because then that's shitty commentary. Nobody wants to listen to someone be like a yes man to an audience. And, you know, if you're truly trying to give your own political commentary, which is why people subscribe, you can't play the same note. It's not going to be, you know, a greatest hits album every single time. You've got to adapt. And that's tough because sometimes you say things and you make a lot of people mad, and then you see it on Reddit. You see what they call you, and you know sometimes it can be soul crushing, but at the same time, it's coming from a place of a good faith place. Like you're trying genuinely to do good, and the thing about that is sometimes you don't do good when you try to do good. But so long as your intent is to like move us in that better direction, then I think that you're doing okay. Like there are creators that I know personally that I love, but I think that you know it's really difficult for them to get off of what they've been talking about. Right. Right. And it's easy because like you almost like you condition yourself in a certain way. Like I'll notice there's periods of time where I'll be like on something and I just won't let it go. And net neutrality was kind of like that. So I had to force myself off because I was so pissed off after that. But that's a different story. But like we get on different.
It's an important issue that hasn't gone away. Let's just
keep
that in mind. Yeah.
Exactly. But like that, the DNC, certain things where it's like, okay, like I can't just keep harping away at this. I know that people are still mad, and I know that if I do this, I'm going to get a lot more views.
Oh yeah.
But having said that, though, there's this other issue that I haven't talked about that nobody knows about that's being completely ignored. And I have this platform. It might not get me a lot of views, but hey, what am I truly doing this for? Is it to be an influencer like TikTok star? No. Like, I'm just this nerdy person who, if I lose this platform one day, then I guess I'll just pursue what I wanted to do, go be a teacher or something. Like, I'm not gonna play risk free. That's the thing. Like, you have to take risks. You have to be honest, and that's what I'm trying to do to the best of my ability. Even though sometimes I think that I let myself down, and maybe I feel like I could have done better. But we're all human, and we're all trying to do the best that we can. That's all you can do.
I totally get it. I mean, I could listen. I know people come like, oh, the DNC. Tell us about the DNC. It's like we're not in the middle of the DNC right now. Like,
right.
DNC is not even in session. Like, I don't even know who the members are right now because like they're in this like weird transition. But you know what I do want to talk about? I want to talk about Armenia. I want to talk about Lebanon right now. I just did an hour with Jim Zogby. We did a Golden Dawn episode for an hour the other day. Like, these are things that are really important. And if you're not watching cable news, and we do that stuff during our main show, not that cable news stuff, but we talk about the election, and it's seismic and it's important, but it's dominating the space. So it is important to talk about net neutrality. It is important to talk about monopolies. It is important to talk about how TikTok is or more importantly, Twitch, for instance. Like last night I woke up and I was just like, wait, Twitch is owned by Amazon. Like, how ironic is it that AOC, who like took on Amazon, is on Twitch, giving them like more money than they've seen on Twitch ever. That wasn't her intention, and I want to make that very clear. But like, that's the power of a monopoly. And these are conversations we need to have simultaneously, chewing gum and walking. And it's not sexy, it's not clickbait, it's not algorithm pushing, but hopefully our audience grows smarter, as I've seen, and more nuanced. And as you said, like you're reading along this path, and you're learning as you go, and it's making you a better citizen, a better host, a better influencer, if you want to use that word. Because as a movement, they're dying out, and we're getting smarter, and we have to learn from our history, most importantly, so that we don't make the same mistakes of being divided at a time when they're collapsing. So
yeah, absolutely.
I am so appreciative. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. I love that you invited me. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. It's always fun. Your show is phenomenal. Like, if my show was this like put together, and I had this nice of a set from the beginning. Oh my God. Like, your set is like, I love it. Thank you. I mean, little by little, we're like figuring it out. Because of you. I mean, like, I didn't know what mic to get. I didn't know what camera. Like, I'm telling you guys, I called all my favorite people and I was like, what do I do? I don't know how to do this. Like, I kind of have an idea what I want to talk about. And again, it's like, it's step by step. So, best of luck in the next 11 days of this election. Hopefully we'll come out with some sort of winner on election night, but who knows how that's going to happen. I'm hoping for the best, but I'm going to brace for the worst, because psychologically, I think that's the smartest place where you can be at, and not expect something like on Tuesday night, as we've kind of become accustomed to. Because that's important, because we might not get results right away. We probably won't, actually. Yeah, we didn't get with Hillary. They called it, but like it was still a little unclear. Yeah, obviously Gore, Bush, whole other story. But oh God, yeah. This is when you give money to your independent media. What's your Patreon? It's patreon.com/Humanist Report, but I am going to tell people to hold off until after the election. If you can give money to a candidate, first of all, like this, if you give them like $10, that's how many more mailers? I don't even know. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's these little things that you can do to push them over, because right now, since there's the election, we're getting a boost in views, which means a boost in ad revenue. So I don't need it right now. Give it to the candidates. That's great. Unless you have extra, then of course. But I mean, like, if people are pinching pennies, it's a tough time. So give it to a candidate that you support, one that's running in your district, preferably. But I mean, some of these great ones who are like on the edge, like Donna Imem in Texas's 31st congressional district. She's within a point or two from flipping. Give it to her. Cara Eastman, great candidates. Yep. Pam Keith, I'm going to throw out some more. Pam Keith, that district might even determine what Florida's outcome is based on the Electoral College. Mike Siegel, Marquita Bradshaw in Tennessee. I'm forgetting a ton probably right now, and I'm so sorry if I am. These are
Adam
the candidates.
Christensen.
Adam Christensen, good one. I'm gonna go state legislature. Christine Pellegrino, who was the first candidate to win post-Trump as a Bernie supporter, flipped a Trump district 40 points from an assembly race in a special election. She's now running for state senate in a district that's more Democratic and is right on the edge. And she is, I mean, talk about mailers. Like, that's what it's about. It's like, can you raise an extra $30,000 in the last week to be able to send that money to the mail and get it out there? I mean, that's what it comes down to, is like, it can't be the last 2 days. It has to be like right around now. So throw that money over there. The state legislatures are huge. Pennsylvania legislature is up. Arizona legislature is up right now. It's very tight in those states, and those are swing states. So definitely ground up. If you don't want to give to Biden, give there. I'm actually
There's so many races that are like, if we can flip these districts, like Donna Imams is one that I keep looking at because she's like right there. She's right there. If we can flip that district, I mean, you have this leftist, like a committed leftist, UBI, single payer. If she ousted a Republican who's now trying to run as like a moderate Republican, he's scared. He's right there. So, you can make a huge difference. And if we got like half of the progressives that are like on the edge in Congress, like what do we have, a squad of like 15 people, 20 people? Like, that would be huge. It's not just AOC plus 3. I think Cory Bush made a great point about this. It's AOC plus like 18. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm really looking at. Like, if you hate the two options that are going to be in the White House, of course, but look at what can happen in Congress. Like, that's everything right there.
Getting a little spicy here. Obama really didn't like Keith Ellison because Keith Ellison was like the most progressive member of Congress at the time, and he challenged Obama vocally and overtly, and Obama took that out on him when he ran for DNC chair. But it's okay because he's attorney general now prosecuting white nationalists.
That's awesome.
So that's what happens. But if you have one voice like that was one voice in Congress at the time. Imagine 20 of those, 30 of those, 40 of those. I don't think Biden's going to be able to push that away.
And they're just more influential. Like, someone like AOC has like way more influence than even Dianne Feinstein. So, it's really like Trump thinks that he's hurting them when he talks about the far left, but everyone's paying attention to them. They have the platform right now. She has a bully pulpit, which a member of Congress who's like this freshman never has. You know what I mean? So it's like we got to up those numbers a little bit so we have a solid block and not just like 5 progressives in Congress that,
as Nancy Pelosi says.
Just
4 votes.
It's like 3 people. We're so close. I know. Oh, she's another story.
You're the best. Thank you.
You're the best. Thank you.
You a hug, a virtual hug. Yeah.
My awkward hug translates virtually as well as it would in real life.
It's okay. It's social distance hug.
Exactly.
I'm a huge fan. I know everybody here knows you, but just very grateful for what you stand for, what you're using your platform for, and like honestly just your like life for, because that's really important. Like, you could be teaching classes, which is amazing, but that's like what you study to do. You this is what your work is in, and now you're doing it for a global audience, and I learn from you, and I know others do too, and just thank you for being a great comment.
Well, likewise. And let me just say, your show is incredible, and you are a phenomenal addition to the Majority Report.
Thank you.
Love it. Watch very, very frequently. I've been getting up earlier, so I can watch it live sometimes. And
it's your West Coast.
Great. West Coast, yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It's not like you're waking up at like noon. No judgment. Like, that sounds like a great life.
It's basically noon on East Coast time, because I get up around like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Which people consider late. That's early for me, because I would like stay up all night editing, and then I'd get up. I'd sleep till like noon West Coast time, which is very late on the East Coast. So yeah,
you got to have the quiet when you're editing. And a lot of people are like this, filmmakers. They like it's quiet. You don't have distractions. Yeah,
it's a lot. I'm adjusting to like editing earlier, and I'm starting to really like it. But yeah, the quiet is everything. The darkness helps a little bit too, because I don't want to like go play outside now that I have anything to do. But you know what I mean? Like, you see the sunshine, it's a little bit difficult. But yeah, it's it's my, I do my thing. I try.
Do an amazing job.
Well, thank you. You as well.
Not jealous. I'm in awe because I can't do it. Thank you for joining. I hope to see you again
Thank you.
soon. Maybe
Yes.
someday in the future in person.
We'll be in touch, of course. We'll talk. There's no shortage of things to talk about. So we'll be in touch again.
Thank you, Mike. Humanist Report. You guys know it. If you don't, I don't know what's going on. So take care, everybody. Great debate. And we will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. West Coast, out on the Nomi Key Show. Let me just double check there's no if there's super chats, I promise we'll get to them tomorrow. Dorsey's always up onto this. Oh, Jose, thank you so much. Tim Bob, thank you so much. Much love to you. There is Tim Bob Dunn, fellow Oregonian. Is that his name?
Okay. Yeah, Oregonian.
Sending you love. And Jose says, don't lose hope. Biden sucks, but Trump must be defeated to keep advancing the leftist agenda. Exactly. There are more leftists now than ever before. Correct. So lots of good love. More to come tomorrow. We will see you. Have a nice night editing.
I will. It'll be a long night, but I'm ready.
Yeah. I'm going to go get my last mezcal. I've had 2. On my 3rd. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to make a pot of coffee. All right, take care.